When I was 9, everything I knew came crashing down. My mom, the one person who made me feel safe in this chaotic world, passed away. She was the glue that held our little family together. It was like the world stopped spinning the moment she was gone. I thought my dad, Paul, would step in and fill that gap. But looking back, I realize now that he wasn't capable of holding things together. For a while, it was just me and him. We tried to adjust, but it never felt right. He'd take me to school, we'd eat dinner together, and there was this awkward silence where my mom used to be. It wasn't perfect, but it was bearable. Then came Sarah. Sarah wasn't much older than my dad, but she had this way of taking over. She was 34, vibrant, confident, and seemingly perfect for my dad. I don't remember the first dinner with her very well, but I do remember that something felt off. She smiled too much, acted too sweet, and I never got a sense of who she really was. It didn't take long for her to move in, and with her came her daughter Mia. Mia was 16, but she acted like she owned the world. From the second she walked in, she made sure everyone knew she was the star of the show. Sarah didn't even try to make me feel like I mattered. She just expected me to be okay with everything changing. At first, I didn't really say anything. I was just a kid, trying to process the loss of my mom and trying to make sense of this new family. But things quickly got worse. My dad, who I used to rely on, seemed to disappear. Sarah became the center of attention, and Mia became the princess of the house. And there I was, fading into the background, feeling invisible. By the time I was 10, it was like I didn't even exist. I became the housekeeper. I cleaned up after Mia, even though she was 16 and old enough to do her own chores. But she never did. Instead, she left her stuff everywhere, and it was my responsibility to clean up the mess. While she hung out with her friends or watched TV, I was the one scrubbing dishes, folding laundry, and vacuuming the floors. And my dad, he never said a word. He acted like it was completely normal for me to be treated like this. He didn't care. But here's where it gets really bad. It was Christmas time, and my dad, Sarah, and Mia decided to go on a vacation. I figured, hey, it's Christmas family time, right? Wrong. I was told I had to stay home to look after Mia's dog, a goofy golden retriever named Max. I couldn't believe it. They were going on vacation, and they were leaving me behind to take care of a dog that wasn't even mine. I tried to suggest that they hire a pet sitter or maybe take Max to a kennel, but Sarah shut me down instantly. "It's a waste of money," she said, like I wasn't even a person with feelings. "You're old enough to stay here alone for a few days." I was 9 years old, alone, on Christmas. While they were off having the time of their lives in some fancy cabin up in the mountains, I spent that first night sitting on the couch, with Max curled up at my feet. I didn't want to watch TV. I didn't want to do anything. I wanted my family back. The family that was supposed to be there for me. The one I thought would be together for holidays. Instead, I felt abandoned, alone. I just wanted to feel like I mattered. But that night, I realized I didn't. And my dad? He didn't fight for me. He didn't even care enough to make sure I felt included. It was clear to me then his priorities had shifted, and I wasn't part of the new family he'd built. He was okay with leaving me behind. That Christmas marked a turning point. From that moment on, I started pulling away from my dad. I didn't look up to him anymore. He wasn't the man I thought he was. And it wasn't just that Christmas trip, things got worse after that. Mia got worse. Sarah got worse. And I felt myself disappearing. As the months passed, nothing really changed. If anything, it got worse. Mia continued to act like she was the queen of the house, and Sarah, well, she just let her. I was still the one doing all the work. One cleaned up after them. I did all the chores, from dishes to laundry to vacuuming. And every time I'd ask for help, Sarah would just smile and say, "It's good practice for when you have your own place one day." Practice? I was 12, not about to run my own household. I didn't even know how to cook for myself, but somehow I was supposed to keep the entire house spotless. Meanwhile, Mia, who was supposed to be the older one, would avoid any responsibility like it was the plague. If she wasn't out with her friends, she was glued to her phone or watching TV. I could feel myself becoming a servant, a background character in my own life. And my dad? He was still MIA. There were moments when I tried to talk to him, tried to get him to understand that something wasn't right. I told him it wasn't fair that I was always stuck doing everything while Mia got to live her life. But his response? Life's not fair. That was it. No sympathy, no empathy, just deal with it. That phrase became the anthem of my life in that house. I was just supposed to deal with it, no matter how unfair or miserable it was. I wanted to scream, but I didn't know how. What good would it do anyway? My dad wasn't the man I thought he was. And Sarah? She was making it clear that I was a burden. The one thing I had left, my mom, was gone. And now it felt like my dad was too. He wasn't there for me. Not in the way I needed him to be. But then came the breaking point. Something so small, but so significant. It was a Saturday afternoon, and I was in the kitchen, mindlessly doing the dishes. Mia was sprawled out on the couch, scrolling through her phone, while Sarah was in the other room, talking on the phone to someone about her business. I was still cleaning, trying to keep everything in order, trying to ignore the resentment building up in me. Then Mia dropped a plate. I don't even know if it was an accident or if she just didn't care, but the plate shattered on the floor. She didn't get up. She didn't even look at it. She just continued scrolling on her phone. I stood there, staring at the mess, my hands frozen in midair. For a second, I didn't know what to do. Then Sarah came rushing into the room. But instead of asking if I was okay or even telling Mia to clean up the mess, she pointed straight at me and said, "You're the one who's always cleaning around here. Get to it." Something in me snapped. I dropped the dish towel in my hands and walked out of the kitchen. I didn't say a word. I didn't care about the broken plate or the mess anymore. I was done. I didn't want to be that person anymore, the one who was always expected to do everything. The one who was supposed to stay quiet and just go along with it. I wasn't that person anymore. That night, I found myself sitting in my room, staring at the walls. I realized how far I'd let myself go, how much of me I'd given up just to fit into a family that didn't even care about me. I wasn't invisible, but I felt like I was. I wasn't a maid, but I sure as hell was treated like one. I needed a change. And it wasn't going to come from asking my dad to help me out, because he wasn't going to. It wasn't going to come from talking to Sarah, because she'd just laugh it off and send me back to the kitchen. I had to take matters into my own hands. The next day, I packed a bag. I wasn't planning on leaving forever, but I needed space. I needed to get out. I called Aunt Rachel, my mom's sister, and asked if I could stay with her for a while. She said yes, without hesitation. I don't even think she understood how badly I needed that. She just knew. When I told my dad I was going to Aunt Rachel's, he didn't even ask why. He didn't say anything, actually. He just nodded, like it was no big deal. That hurt more than anything. I spent the weekend with Aunt Rachel and her kids. They made me feel like I mattered again. Like I was a person, not a servant or an afterthought. They let me breathe. I realized that there was still love in my life, even if it wasn't coming from the people I thought it would. By the time I went back to the house, I felt a little stronger. I wasn't going to let Sarah and Mia control me anymore. But I also knew that I had to be careful. I couldn't change everything in one day. I couldn't expect my dad to suddenly care about me. That wasn't who he was anymore. But something had shifted inside me. I was done letting them walk all over me. The next time Mia dropped a plate, I wasn't going to clean it up. The next time Sarah told me to do something, I was going to stand up for myself. The next time my dad said, "Deal with it," I was going to remind him that I wasn't dealing with it anymore. I wasn't quite sure what I expected when I went back to the house after staying with Aunt Rachel. Maybe I thought that things would magically get better, or that my dad would suddenly realize how much I had been suffering. But I knew better. I knew that nothing would change unless I made it change, and even then, it would probably take a long time. The truth was, I didn't have any power in that house anymore, but I had power over myself. And for the first time in years, I felt that power. When I walked back in, it was the same. Mia was on the couch, scrolling through her phone, and Sarah was somewhere in the kitchen, likely planning her next move to make my life harder. My dad was on the couch, flicking through the TV channels, completely oblivious to what was going on around him. I didn't speak to anyone when I came in. I didn't have to. I had already made up my mind that this time I wasn't just going to be quiet. I wasn't going to let them walk all over me anymore. The next few days passed in a strange silence. I didn't go out of my way to engage with anyone, and they didn't engage with me. It felt like everyone was just pretending I didn't exist, like if we all ignored each other long enough, we could pretend everything was fine. But I couldn't pretend anymore. I wasn't a child who could be manipulated by silence and avoidance. I was growing up, and I needed to make sure that I was seen and heard. It wasn't long before Sarah started acting more aggressively. I could tell she didn't like that I wasn't falling in line like I used to. She wanted to control everything she always had, but now it was like she couldn't stand that I wasn't afraid of her anymore. She started throwing more responsibility on me, making sure that every chore in the house became my problem. I don't know why, but it felt like she thought I was still a little kid, that I could be manipulated into doing things just because she said so. But I wasn't that kid anymore. One evening, as I was cleaning the kitchen again, Sarah came in and told me that I needed to take care of dinner. I remember standing there, holding the dish towel in my hands, feeling this overwhelming sense of frustration build up inside me. She said it with that same condescending tone she always used, like I was just a worker in her little kingdom. I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time, I didn't back down. "I'm not cooking dinner tonight," I said, my voice steady but firm. "You're perfectly capable of making dinner yourself, Sarah." She raised an eyebrow, her eyes narrowing. She wasn't used to me standing up to her, but I wasn't backing down. "Not anymore." "What did you just say?" she asked, her tone dripping with that familiar venom. "I said I'm not cooking. If you want it, make it yourself," I repeated. I couldn't believe those words were coming out of my mouth, but once I said them, I felt a little lighter, like a weight had been lifted off my chest. She stared at me for a long moment, like she was trying to figure out if I was bluffing. But I wasn't. And then, in a move that I can only describe as pure frustration, she stormed off, muttering something about how ungrateful I was. I stood there in the kitchen, my heart pounding, a mix of pride and disbelief flooding over me. I didn't know what was going to happen next, but I knew something had shifted. I wasn't just going to be a doormat anymore. I wasn't going to do things just because they expected me to. If they wanted something from me, they were going to have to treat me like I mattered. The next day, my dad noticed the tension. It wasn't hard to spot his inability to ignore the rift between Sarah and me was one of the few things he hadn't turned a blind eye to. He asked me what was going on, but when I told him, he didn't seem to care much. "It's just how things are now," he said, shrugging like it was no big deal. "That's what you always say," I replied, barely keeping my frustration in check. "But it's not okay, Dad." He didn't argue with me, he never did. But the indifference in his voice made it clear that he wasn't going to step in and help. Not that I expected him to. For the next few weeks, I kept my distance from Sarah and Mia. I focused on school, spending as much time at Aunt Rachel's house as I could. When I wasn't at school or with Aunt Rachel, I was holed up in my room, trying to avoid the drama that was brewing downstairs. But one day, things took an unexpected turn. I was sitting in the living room trying to relax after a long day when Mia came in, looking nervous. "Hey, can I talk to you for a minute?" she asked, her voice uncharacteristically quiet. I raised an eyebrow. This was the same Mia who had treated me like dirt for years. The girl who never bothered to lift a finger, who made my life a living hell, suddenly wanted to talk? "Why?" I asked, not sure if I even wanted to hear it. She hesitated, glancing over her shoulder like she was afraid someone might be listening. I need help with something," she said, biting her lip. I was confused. "What kind of help?" "Well, it's about school. I've been failing some of my classes, and I was wondering if you could, help me catch up. I know you're smart, and I need to pass." She looked at me like she was waiting for me to say yes, like I was supposed to jump at the chance to help her after everything she had put me through. I sat there for a moment, unsure of how to respond. Part of me wanted to say no because why should I help the person who had made my life miserable for so long? But there was another part of me, the part that still wanted to believe that people could change, that maybe this was her way of reaching out. "Why don't you ask Sarah for help?" I asked, my voice colder than I meant it to be. She shrugged, looking frustrated. "She's too busy, and honestly, I don't think she cares. You're the only one who's ever actually helped me before. I need your help." It hit me then. This wasn't a simple request for help. This was her trying to manipulate me, trying to make me feel like I owed her something. She had been treating me like dirt for years, and now she was expecting me to come running to her aid. I wasn't having it, not this time. "You know what?" I said, standing up and walking toward the door. "You've never cared about me before. and you never will. Don't come to me now just because you need something." She stood there, speechless, as I walked out of the room. I wasn't going to be dragged into her mess. I had enough of my own to deal with. And for the first time in a long time, I realized something important. I didn't have to be her savior. I didn't have to take care of everyone else, especially when no one had ever taken care of me. Things didn't improve at home. In fact, the tension between Sarah and me only escalated after my little stand in the kitchen. I could feel the weight of her displeasure, even when she didn't say a word. It was like an unspoken war. Sarah would give me passive-aggressive comments, making sure I knew she was irritated. Mia didn't even acknowledge me anymore, like she'd decided I wasn't worth her attention. But you know what? I was okay with that. In fact, I preferred it that way. I didn't need their approval anymore. I didn't need to play by their rules. The months dragged on, and I kept to my routine. I went to school, spent time with Aunt Rachel whenever I could, and avoided spending much time at home. The less I saw of Sarah and Mia, the better. But my dad? Well, he remained as distant as ever. He'd sit in his chair, pretending nothing was wrong, and occasionally ask me about my day. I'd give him a simple answer and move on. There was no point in trying to bridge the gap between us when he wasn't even interested in acknowledging the mess his new life had created. It was around that time that I started thinking about the future, about leaving. I'd spent so many years putting up with their shit that I knew it was time to finally do something for myself. College was my escape. It was my ticket out, and I wasn't going to waste it. The idea of leaving was both terrifying and exhilarating. I knew I couldn't rely on my dad to help me, but I had Aunt Rachel and my cousins, who always had my back. I wasn't alone, even if it felt like it at home. Then, one day, things took a sharp turn. I came home from school, already dreading the usual silence that filled the house. But when I walked in, something felt different. The air was thicker, charged with tension. I found Sarah standing by the kitchen counter, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. Mia was nowhere to be seen. "Can we talk?" Sarah asked, her tone far too calm. That's when I knew something was coming. I didn't respond immediately. I wasn't sure I wanted to hear whatever she had to say, but I couldn't ignore her either. So I nodded slowly. She started in with the same rehearsed tone. "I know things haven't been perfect between us, but I'm trying to be patient, trying to make this work for everyone. You need to understand that I'm doing what I think is best for the family." Her words were empty. They didn't feel genuine. They felt like an attempt to manipulate me again. "You want to talk about what's best for the family?" I asked, my voice calm but sharp. "What's best for the family is treating me like a person, not a servant. What's best for the family is not making me feel invisible every damn day." Sarah's eyes flickered for just a moment, and I could tell she wasn't used to being challenged. She took a deep breath before responding, her voice taking on a colder edge. "I don't know what you want me to say. You've never given me a chance. You're always so angry. Maybe if you tried being more understanding, we could all get along." I felt a burst of frustration build in my chest. Was she really going to sit there and act like I was the one who had messed everything up? I've been understanding for years. I've dealt with being ignored, being treated like a maid, and being constantly put second. But nothing changes. You and Mia just keep walking all over me, and I'm supposed to just let it slide. Well, I'm done letting it slide. She took a step back, her eyes narrowing as though she was trying to decide whether to back off or fight. I knew the conversation was going nowhere. Sarah wasn't going to admit she was wrong. She wasn't going to change. "I'm not your problem," I said, my voice steady now, a little more final. "I'm not the one causing all this drama. You are. So don't act like I'm the one making things difficult. I've been trying to make it work for years, and I'm done." I turned and walked out of the kitchen before she could say anything else. I didn't need her approval. I didn't need her to apologize. I had already decided what I was going to do. I was going to leave. I wasn't going to spend any more of my life in that house, waiting for things to magically get better. I was going to build a future where I was in control. I started preparing for the next chapter of my life, the one where I didn't have to deal with the toxicity of my dad, Sarah, and Mia. College was just around the corner, and I was ready for it. I wasn't going to let anything hold me back, but of course, life had other plans. It was a week later when I got the call from my dad. I was sitting at Aunt Rachel's when my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen, Dad. I almost didn't answer, but something in me told me to pick up. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was that little part of me that still wanted some kind of relationship with him. I answered the phone, trying to keep my voice neutral. "Hey," I said. "Hey," my dad replied, his voice softer than usual. "I was wondering if you could come home for a bit. There's something we need to talk about." I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. I had a feeling I knew what this was about, but I wasn't sure I was ready for it. "What is it?" I asked, trying to keep the edge out of my voice. "It's about Mia," he said. "She's been struggling lately, and we just thought maybe you could help. You know, with her schoolwork. She needs someone to talk to." I felt my heart drop. After everything, now Mia needed me? Now, when she had treated me like garbage for years? I didn't respond right away. I just stared at the phone, feeling the weight of everything I had been through. My dad had never stood up for me, never even cared enough to notice how badly I was treated. And now, after everything, he wanted me to step in and help Mia? "You know what, Dad?" I said, my voice firm. "I'm not going to help her. She's been nothing but cruel to me, and now you expect me to fix her problems? No, I'm not going to do it." There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and I could almost hear my dad trying to process what I said. "I understand," he finally said, his voice quiet. "But she's your sister," and I thought you'd want to help. I shook my head, even though he couldn't see me. "She's not my sister. She never was. You made your choice, Dad. You chose her over me a long time ago." I hung up before he could say anything else. That was it. That was the moment when I knew I had done the right thing. I had stood up for myself, and I had finally put an end to the cycle of manipulation. After hanging up on my dad, I felt a strange sense of calm. Maybe it was the relief of finally standing up for myself, or maybe it was the fact that I had drawn a line in the sand. Either way, I knew that I had made the right choice. I wasn't going to let them manipulate me any longer. But of course, the peace didn't last long. The next few weeks were a blur. I threw myself into my schoolwork, doing everything I could to stay focused on my future. College was right around the corner, and I needed to keep my head straight. Aunt Rachel was still my safe haven, and I spent as much time with her as I could. We had dinners together, laughed over stupid things, and just enjoyed each other's company. For the first time in years, I felt like I was truly living for myself and not for the expectations of others. Still, despite all the support I had from Aunt Rachel, something in me was unsettled. I hadn't heard from my dad or Sarah since that phone call. Mia didn't bother to reach out, which wasn't a surprise. It's funny how quickly people forget about you when you stop doing things for them. I thought I was done with them. I thought I had moved on, but when you've been ignored and overlooked for so long, there's this quiet part of you that always wonders if maybe, just maybe, they'll come around. I knew better than to expect anything from my dad, but there was still a small part of me that wanted him to show up to prove that I hadn't completely lost him. That's why, when the letter arrived, I wasn't prepared for it. I found it on the kitchen counter one afternoon when I came back to my house to pick up some things. The envelope was plain, just a simple white envelope with my name written on it in my dad's familiar handwriting. I froze for a moment, staring at it, feeling like I had been sucker punched. It wasn't like I wanted to hear from him, but there was something about the idea of finally getting an apology, or at least some kind of acknowledgement, that had me opening it without thinking. Inside, there was just one letter. It wasn't long, just a few short paragraphs, but it hit me harder than I expected. "Dear your name, I know things between us have been strained, and I can't blame you for how you feel. I know I've let you down, and I can see now that I've made mistakes. Sarah and Mia are a part of our family now, and I want you to understand that. But that doesn't mean I don't still care about you. I miss you. I miss the days when it was just us, when things felt simpler. You're about to start a new chapter in your life, and I just want to be a part of it. Please, let me know if you're open to talking. Love." Dad, I sat down at the table, the letter in my hands, and I felt this whirlwind of emotions hit me all at once. Anger, betrayal, and, weirdly enough, hope that maybe this was the start of something different. That maybe, just maybe, my dad finally saw what he had done. But I also knew better. I had been waiting for this moment for so long, but what had changed? What made him reach out now, after all this time? I read the letter over and over, trying to make sense of it. I wanted to respond, to tell him everything I had been holding in for years. I wanted to scream at him, tell him how badly he'd hurt me, how he'd chosen Sarah and Mia over me every damn time. But then I realized no matter how much I wanted to, it wasn't going to change anything. It wasn't going to make him suddenly realize how much he had neglected me. I didn't respond to the letter. I didn't write anything back. Instead, I just left it on the table, the same way he had left me on Christmas all those years ago, waiting, wondering if I mattered. I wasn't going to be that person anymore. I wasn't going to wait for my dad's approval. I had spent enough of my life waiting for something that would never come. A few days later, I received a text from Aunt Rachel. She knew I was dealing with a lot, and she wanted to check in on me. We talked for a while, and I told her about the letter. She listened patiently, offering her usual comforting words. But then she said something that stuck with me. "You don't owe him anything. You've already done enough. You've worked so hard to get where you are, and you're finally free of that toxic environment. Don't let him drag you back in." Her words hit me like a ton of bricks. I had spent so long thinking that maybe, just maybe, I owed my dad another chance. But Rachel was right. I didn't owe him anything. Not anymore. And with that realization, everything changed. I took a deep breath and walked away from the letter. I moved forward. I focused on the future, my future, and I let go of the past. I wasn't going to let my dad's guilt trip dictate how I lived my life. I wasn't going to let Sarah or Mia or anyone else make me feel like I wasn't worth something. The days leading up to college were filled with excitement and nerves. I was finally leaving the house, leaving the memories of the past behind. But it wasn't just about escaping anymore, it was about starting fresh, starting new, and learning how to live for myself. And then the day came, the day I was officially leaving for college. I packed my things into my car, feeling a mix of excitement and fear, but mostly, I felt free. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was in control of my own life. I said goodbye to Aunt Rachel and the family, thanking them for everything. They were the only ones who had ever really been there for me. As I drove away from my childhood home, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. The house that had once been my prison was now in the rearview mirror. I was free. And nothing, not even my dad's letter, was going to stop me from moving forward. The first week of college was a whirlwind. New faces, new places, and a freedom I hadn't even realized I was craving. I spent my days getting to know my roommates, trying to figure out how to balance classes with everything else, and just breathing. I wasn't tied down anymore. I wasn't constantly looking over my shoulder, wondering what Sarah or Mia would do next, or if my dad would call to guilt trip me into coming back. For the first time in years, I felt like I had control of my own life. But, like clockwork, my dad called. It was exactly 1 week after I'd left, and when I saw his name on my phone screen, I felt that familiar pit in my stomach. I had been expecting it. I knew he'd reach out eventually, but I wasn't sure I was ready to talk to him yet. I picked up the phone anyway. The guilt had always been there, a quiet voice in the back of my mind, reminding me that despite everything, he was still my dad. "Hey, Dad," I said, trying to sound casual, though my heart was pounding in my chest. "Hey," he replied, his voice uncertain. "I know it's been a while since we talked, but I just wanted to check in. How are you? How's everything going with school?" His words felt hollow. It was as if he were trying to fill the space between us with small talk, trying to avoid the real issue. I knew it wasn't just about school. It was about guilt. It always was. "I'm doing good," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "School's been great so far. I'm adjusting to everything, figuring things out." "That's good," he said, though his voice still held that uncomfortable edge. I could hear him sigh. "Listen, I know things have been rough between us, and I get it. I really do. I know I messed up. I just want you to know I'm here for you, okay? You don't have to deal with everything on your own." There it was, again, the familiar attempt at a soft apology, one that didn't feel genuine enough to actually fix anything. I had heard these words so many times over the years, and they always came with the same emptiness. "Thanks, Dad," I said, keeping it simple. I wasn't ready for this conversation. Not yet. Not when the wounds were still so fresh. But I'm okay. Really. There was a pause on the other end of the line, like he was trying to find the right words to say. but I wasn't sure there was anything left for him to say that would change how I felt. "I miss you," he finally said, his voice quieter now. "I just want things to go back to how they were. I know I can't fix everything, but I'm trying." My heart clenched, and for a moment, I almost gave in. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that he truly wanted to make things right. But I had learned the hard way that words meant nothing if they weren't backed up by actions. "I know you're trying," I said, my voice softer than I intended. "But Dad, you can't just pretend like everything's fine. You can't expect me to forget how you've treated me all these years." "I know," he said quickly, "and I'm sorry. I know I've been a bad father, and I cut him off before he could finish. It's not just about being a bad father. It's about making me feel like I didn't matter. It's about picking Sarah and Mia over me. Every single time. You were never there for me when I needed you, Dad. I can't just forget that." The words hit me like a slap, but I had to say them. He needed to hear them. And I needed to say them for my own peace of mind. There was another long pause. The silence stretched out between us, thick and uncomfortable. Finally, he spoke, his voice barely audible. "I get it," he said quietly. "I really do. I just wanted you to know that I'm here if you need me. I'll always be here." I didn't know how to respond to that. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to scream at him, to tell him that it was too late for that he had let me down for too long. But another part of me, maybe the part that still wanted a father, just wanted to pretend like everything was okay. But I couldn't let myself go back to that place. "I'm not ready for that, Dad," I said finally, my voice steady and resolute. "Maybe one day we can talk, but not right now. I need to focus on myself, on building my life." There was a long pause again, and this time I could hear the hurt in his voice. But I wasn't going to apologize for protecting myself anymore. I had spent so many years trying to fix things with him, trying to be the daughter he wanted, but I couldn't keep doing that. I couldn't keep sacrificing my happiness just for the hope that he would change. "Okay," he said quietly, and I could hear the resignation in his voice. "I understand. I just want you to be happy. I will be," I said, finally feeling a sense of finality in my words. I have to be. The conversation ended shortly after that, and as I hung up the phone, I felt a weight lift off my chest. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't carrying the burden of trying to fix my relationship with my dad. I had let go. I had finally chosen myself. I looked around my small college dorm room, the one I had made into my own little sanctuary. It wasn't much, but it was mine, and that was all I needed. I didn't need the approval of my dad or anyone else. I had built something for myself, something no one could take away from me. The next day, I woke up to the sound of birds chirping outside my window. I smiled as I stretched and got out of bed. I was free to make my own choices, free to live my life without the weight of my past dragging me down. I wasn't the same person I was when I left home. I wasn't the scared little girl hoping for her dad's approval. I was stronger now, more sure of who I was and what I wanted, and that was enough. Story 2, my name is Jake. I've worked in construction for the last 10 years, and I'm currently 29. It's not glitzy. I've established a nice life for myself, but it's hard work, but it pays the bills. I have a good place, a trustworthy truck, and a group of people that appreciate my work. However, there has always been conflict in my family, particularly with my sister Emma. I've always felt that I've been living in her shadow for the most of our lives, even though she's 5 years younger than me. She is praised by everyone for being a future doctor, making her the golden child. Without a doubt, she is smart. However, she has consistently felt better than me. Like my work isn't important enough to be respected, simply because it lacks a white-collar title and a degree. When Emma enrolled in medical school around 2 years ago, things really began to go south. Both my dad and I were overjoyed for her. I knew she would be pushing her ass for years to come since medical school is no joke. I was surprised by how soon she began to rely on me financially rather than emotionally. Don't misunderstand me. Helping out relatives is nothing new to me. I've always made an effort to support them, particularly Emma. I'm the type of man who will jump at the chance to help, even if it means risking my life. However, things were beginning to seem a little unfair. It was little stuff at start. "Hello, would you be able to provide a couple $100 this month for rent?" I'm in a hard spot as the loans start to come in. I didn't hesitate. Emma is my sister. Soon, though, it was more than simply rent. Can you assist with this semester's tuition? I have no intention of taking out another loan. Medical supplies for her study came next. It was becoming more and more difficult to say no to each request that came up every time I turned around. She was consuming my funds as if they were nothing, even though I had worked hard and saved to get ahead. The guilt trip persisted. Jake, I'm sure you have the cash. It's not really necessary, is it? However, what transpired that Christmas was what truly got to me. Just before the holiday, I worked a 12-hour shift and was worn out and ready to collapse. Emma was hosting a large party at her house as usual. The entire extended family was coming over to celebrate, and Mom and Dad were present. Naturally, I accepted the invitation, but this year I wasn't feeling it. I decided to forgo it after the year of her incessant demands for money and her pressure to be there for her. I texted Emma to let her know that I would be spending this year at home to unwind. I apologize. I'm completely wiped out. I'll talk to you all again later. She answered quickly and incisively. Jake, you had best be there. Christmas is here. If you fail to show up, you cannot just leave because you are too exhausted. Never again should you bother to show up. In any case, you're only a construction worker. Do you need to do anything else? I was taken aback. For what seemed like an eternity, I gazed at that message. Read it again and again. Emma had made fun of my profession before, but this was the first time it truly got to me. My job has always made me proud. I've worked so hard to reach this point, and my own sister was making fun of me in this way because I wasn't a lawyer, doctor, or anything else she thought was deserving. I didn't text her back. Not even the family supper was attended by me. Rather, the first stayed at home and watched TV while experiencing the same knot in my gut. She had been impolite before, but this time was different. It was a personal matter. She had gone too far. My mother calls me a few days later. Jake, what took place? Now that Emma is unhappy, you're making things more dramatic. Simply attend her party. What's so important? We are related. I lost my temper. What's so important? The main issue is that Emma views me as merely a means of making ends meet. I'm not a bank mom. Her brother is me. Mom let out a sigh. She lowered her voice. Jake, she's simply under a lot of stress because of medical school. She's having trouble, but you've always had a steady work. That's not how she means it. It seemed unbelievable to me. Mom, that's not how she means it. I don't matter to her. All that matters to her is what I can do for her. I decided I needed a break from everything the following week. I didn't pick up Emma's phone or text messages. After giving it a lot of thought, something inside of me exploded. I had had enough of being her ATM. I've had enough of her punching back. Because she had a degree and aspirations of becoming a doctor, she'd always pretended to be superior to me. She was treating me like trash, and I was sick of it. Then came the day that would alter everything. The day she called me. 4 months or so had passed since Christmas. I had been living my life, keeping my distance. I didn't treat her rudely. I simply stopped playing her game. However, Emma's tone changed when she called. I truly need your assistance, Jake. I'm not sure what I'm going to do because I'm late on my rent. You're my only option. I paused. That old familiar guilt tugged at me, but I wasn't going to fall for it again. Not now. Not after everything she'd said. I apologize. Emma, I can't help you this time. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I could practically hear her trying to process my refusal. Then she said, her voice trembling, What do you mean you can't help? You always help. You have to help. I'm going to fail out of med school if I can't pay this rent. Do you want it on your conscience? I inhaled deeply. Emma, you've never once thought about what's on my conscience. You've exploited me for your whole adult life, and I've had enough. You can figure it out on your own. That's when it occurred. The final straw. Emma started to scream. You selfish bastard! How could you do this to me after everything I've done for you? And you can't assist me? Fine. Then don't bother showing up for Christmas next year or any other family occasion. In any case, you're only a construction worker. Even so, what have you got to offer? I wasn't prepared for how hard the words hit. However, they didn't have the same impact this time. I experienced something else in place of guilt. Something liberating. I felt as though a burden had been removed from my chest. I had had enough of her arrogant demeanor. I didn't respond. I realized I was done with the ongoing financial assistance as soon as I hung off the phone. I would no longer cover her medical school expenses. I wouldn't pay her rent or stand by and let her treat me like a second-class citizen. Things started to become extremely intriguing at that point. A week later, she gave me another call, but this time it was different. You could hear the anguish in her voice. "Please, Jake. I said something I didn't mean. I apologize. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean it, you know. Can we have a conversation? At this moment, I truly need you. I'll do anything. Just lend me a hand." It was too late, yet I could sense the change. My willingness to go above and above for her had changed. That's when the real retaliation began. For a minute, I sat there with my phone in my hand, listening to Emma's voice crackle with a mixture of terror and remorse. I didn't feel the need to drop everything to aid her for the first time in years. Rather, I had a sense of empowerment. I felt like I was finally in charge. I was suddenly the one dictating the terms after she had treated me for so long as though I was only helpful when I could provide financial assistance for her issues. However, I had no intention of making things easy for her. The fact that she finally acknowledged her mistake didn't mean that I would just forgive her. This was no time for peacemaking. It was a payback moment. I wasn't going to overlook the fact that she had crossed a line, so I gave her a bit more time to simmer. I took a while to reply. A few days later, she phoned again, but I didn't even answer. She apologized, begged, and promised to make it up to me in 2 texts. The vitriol she had previously hurled at me was quite different from what she said now. I could really sense their despair as she realized that her go-to strategies were no longer effective. I didn't care, though. I was no longer merely a man she could control since she had shown her true self to me. I had supper at my folks' place the next weekend. What transpired between Emma and myself was unknown to them. They simply assumed it was another sibling argument that will be resolved. I didn't even intend to mention it. Emma, however, froze when she spotted me seated at the dining table. She seemed to be seeing a ghost as she gazed at me. The problem was that I had changed as Jake. She was aware once, the one who would sacrifice everything for her. I was a new version of myself, someone who didn't hesitate to assert himself. Acting as though nothing had occurred, she approached me with a tentative grin. "Jake, hello. How are you?" Only when she was attempting to control me did she inquire in a too charming tone. I didn't even blink, just stared her in the eye. "Emma, I've been good. What about you?" I spoke in a cool, collected tone. For a brief while, her smile wavered, but it soon returned. "Excellent. Yes. Simply stressed. Med school, you know, everything. Yes, I am aware of it." I leaned back in my chair and said that. "I am well aware of the strain and tension that accompany it. Not knowing who you can trust might be difficult." She blushed. The tiniest hint of shame was seen in her eyes. She wasn't prepared to acknowledge that she understood what I was saying. Mom spoke out from the opposite side of the table, unaware of the tension. "Are you two still fighting, Jake? What's happening?" "You've been so near all along." I pretended that it was just another quarrel in the family and shook my head. "We're all right, Mom. I simply don't know. It's simply too much these days." Emma gave me a furious look, but I remained where I was. I had no intention of sympathizing with her. Later, as dinner was coming to an end, Emma made an effort to speak with me in private in the kitchen. This time, I could see she was attempting to approach me in a new way. She seemed to be treading very carefully. "Jake, can we have a brief conversation? I sincerely apologize for what I said. I'm aware that I shouldn't have hurt you." I leaned against the counter and just stared at her, crossed arms. "Emma, it has nothing to do with what you said. It has to do with the way you have treated me throughout my life. I've always been the guy who comes through for you when things get hard. Your personal bank is not me." I wasn't going to back down, but she winced. "I apologize." Her voice was quieter now as she said, "I don't mean to act like that. I didn't realize how much I was pushing you, but school has been causing me a lot of stress. I am aware that you have supported me, and I am grateful. I suppose I was at a loss for words." "Yes, well, perhaps it's time you discovered the solution." "Because I'm done playing that game," I said bluntly. We were silent for a long time. She paused just as she appeared to be about to speak. Her throat caught as she spoke. I wasn't going to let her backpedal, even though I knew she was trying to take it all in. Not now. She left the conversation without saying anything more, but I could see that she was thinking about it. The guilt, the regret, and the knowledge that I would not be able to forgive her readily. She had always relied on me to support her. However, the roles had now been reversed. The weeks that followed were rather hectic. Emma made another attempt to get in touch with me. She called me, texted me every day, and even once showed up at my place of employment. But I didn't back down. I was not going to allow her to guilt-trip me into feeling sorry for her, and I politely informed her each time that I would no longer be assisting her. She tried to manipulate me with sweet words, but I wasn't fooled anymore. I wasn't the guy who would let his family walk all over him. The more she begged, the more I realized how deep her entitlement ran, and that just made me more resolute in my decision to stop giving her anything. One day she called me again. This time her voice was desperate, but it wasn't the pleading that got to me. It was the tone, the genuine panic in her voice. "Jake, I can't do this. I'm going to fail. I've lost everything. I can't afford rent, and if I don't pay it, I'll get kicked out. I don't know where else to turn. Please help me." I didn't say anything at first. I just let her talk. Let the silence between us grow heavy. And then when she finally paused to catch her breath, I spoke. "You know, Emma, the truth is, I think you need to learn something. You need to learn what it's like to face the consequences of your actions. You can't keep running to me every time things get tough." There was a long pause, and when she spoke again, I could hear the tears in her voice. "I get it. I've been awful. Please, Jake. I know I've messed up, but I don't know what to do without your help." And for the first time, I felt no sympathy. None. Just a cold sense of finality. "You'll figure it out," I said and hung up. The next day, I went online and posted a public message in our family group chat. I described everything. Every dime I had lent her, every time she'd taken advantage of me, and how much I had done for her. I wasn't doing it to disgrace her, but to make sure everyone knew the truth. That's when Emma's life truly started to disintegrate. But it was merely the beginning. The instant I clicked send on that message, I knew it would stir things up. I didn't expect things to escalate this rapidly, though. My phone buzzed almost instantly with alerts, but it wasn't the normal supportive family remarks I was used to seeing. It was a stream of texts from Emma calling me selfish, callous, and ungrateful for everything she had done for me in the past. I nearly laughed. She had a remarkable capacity to distort things to fit her story. I didn't answer. Instead, I sat back and watched the aftermath develop. Mom phoned first, and I could sense the stress in her voice. "Jake, what's going on? You posted it, but why? You are aware that your sister is already dealing with a lot of stress from medical school." "I understand, Mom, but I'm done with her using me as a safety net for so long. Especially when she treats me like an ATM, I'm not going to continue to give in to her." The person on the other end of the line paused for a while. "She is your sister, though." "Mom," she whispered in a tiny, almost beseeching voice. "She has no right to treat me this way, even if I am aware that she is my sister," I answered. "I will no longer be her fall guy." Mom let out a long sigh. "Jake, you're making a huge error. She is being harmed by you. She's experienced a lot." I was at a loss for words. Emma's treatment of me was all I could think about. The innumerable occasions when she would only visit when she was in need. To be a sister is never enough. To be honest, I didn't feel bad about it, no more. Then Dad arrived. Although his call was as stressful, he approached it differently. He tried to argue with me while remaining composed and meticulous. "I understand your frustration, Jake, but don't you feel like you're going too far? In our family, we don't do stuff like this." I have returned a sardonic chuckle. What the heck? I should just continue to be her ATM. Continue helping her when she's too busy to solve problems on her own. Support is what family is all about. You two have always supported one another, Dad urged. "You can't just ignore her like this. I will not abandon her father. I just will not continue to condone her actions. She has to learn how to be independent." However, it wasn't only my parents who made contact. I began receiving texts asking me questions from my aunts, uncles, cousins, and other members of my extended family, claiming that I was mistaken, that I was being unforgiving. Some even claimed Emma had every right to seek assistance because she was under too much stress from medical school. It seemed unbelievable to me. All of these individuals who had never experienced Emma's treatment of me were now attempting to portray me as the bad guy. Nobody seemed to know what it was like to constantly be the one giving without ever receiving anything in return. Emma's answer followed. It was a lengthy text, filled with remorse and rage as well as a fervent request that I reconsider. She claimed she was unsure of how she would function without me. Her whole future depended on it. She pleaded with me to forgive her, saying that this time would be different. She even expressed regret for her previous remarks to me. It hurt more than I had admitted. After reading her message, I took a time to process what she had said. I had a glimpse of the previous Jake, the one who would have given in right away. Who would have stepped up to provide a helping hand? Who would have persuaded himself that family was the most important thing? Not this time, though. I was filled with resolution this time. Any semblance of pity was driven aside by the recollections of her self-centeredness and the numerous times she had taken advantage of me. That's when I came to a realization. I had been suppressing myself for years, telling myself that I couldn't be the villain. However, it could not have been about being the good man or the evil person. Perhaps it was about letting go of the guilt I had carried for so long and finally advocating for myself. I set my phone down without even trying to answer. I had already decided on something. I wasn't going to give Emma any more money. It was impossible for her to coerce me into returning to save her. She had to experience what it was like to be in charge of her own life. After several days without hearing from her, I finally received the anticipated phone call. I was browsing through some odd content on my phone in the late evening when I noticed her name appear on the screen. I didn't answer. Her voicemail was left. She spoke in a tight, trembling voice. "I understand now, Jake. I really apologize for how horrible I was to you. But don't leave me out here by myself, please. This is not something I can accomplish. There's no one else I can turn to. I just need another chance since I'm failing at everything. Please." I didn't flinch, but the words felt heavy. I was unable to. This sob tale was the exact one I had heard. I wasn't going to fall for it after seeing it a dozen times previously. Not now. Even though I knew it wouldn't make a difference, I left the voicemail there for a time. Then, on the morning after, an odd incident occurred. I didn't recognize the number that called me. I nearly ignored it, assuming it was just another telemarketer. But I chose to answer. "Hi there, Jake. It's the medical school's Dr. Hughes." The voice from the other end came. I went cold. "What's happening?" "Emma has been having a lot of difficulties recently. I'm worried." "We're worried about her progress because she's been behind. To keep her on course, we were wondering if you may think about providing her with financial support. Without your help, she might lose her place in the program. She might not make it, I'm not sure." Despite a sudden surge of fury, I spoke in a steady tone. "I'm no longer assisting her." "I told her that already." "Well," continued Dr. Hughes, "I wanted to be honest with you. Emma informed us that you have always been a huge source of support for her. And to be honest, we are concerned that if she doesn't receive the assistance she requires, she may not be able to keep up." The traditional guilt trip was there. The story of the impoverished, struggling student was presented in a way that attempted to hold me accountable for her shortcomings. I got to my feet, pacing the space. "I apologize, but I'm no longer her fallback. She must solve the problem. I'm finished." After I hung up, I experienced the recognizable feeling of closure. However, it felt different this time. I didn't feel the same acrid rage that used to overwhelm me when I'd had enough of Emma. More like a sense of relief. However, I received another call a few days later. It wasn't from Emma this time. It came from an attorney. When I briefly saw the name of the law business on the caller ID, I was incredulous. I nearly believed I had erred. It could have been a fraud, or perhaps I was being played. However, no. I took the call. "Hi there? It's Jake. Thompson, Mr. I'm phoning on Emma's behalf." The attorney remarked in a kind yet businesslike tone. "She told me to get in touch with her about a financial arrangement. She thinks you owe her money." I nearly laughed as I blinked. "What? What are you discussing?" According to her, you verbally committed to continuing to assist her with her medical school tuition and other financial needs. She believes that you are breaking an agreement now that you have stopped. "You both had," she says. What I was hearing was unbelievable. "Are you serious? She will attempt to sue me for this." Although the lawyer's tone remained composed, there was a faint edge, as if he was attempting to maintain control. She might, however, explore other legal remedies. However, I wanted to make sure that we tried to settle things amicably before we took that approach. I couldn't decide whether to scream or laugh. I was completely stunned. What was Emma prepared to do? The issue was weighing heavily on me, but I chose to face it head-on rather than give in. Something broke inside of me. No, I spoke aggressively. I'm finished. I will no longer support her lifestyle, and I will not allow her to use the legal system to control me. She has abused me for years. Let her attempt to sue me if she wants to. She won't get a dime, though. You may let her know that. The other end paused for a moment. I understand, the lawyer said, but you should be aware that this could escalate. I highly suggest that you think again. There were several possibilities available to me at that time. I had the option to fight it out in court. Instead of apologizing out of terror, I chose not to. I maintained my composure. I said, I'll take my chances. If Emma wants to continue pressing me, you may let her know. She will just exacerbate the situation for herself. For the following few days, I hung up. I was left alone. No texts, no calls. I assumed Emma had come to the realization that she could no longer intimidate me into paying for herself. I then received a letter in the mail about a week later. Emma sent it. A brief message in her distinctive handwriting was enclosed. I was mistaken, Jake. I've taken you for granted and been self-centered. I believed I could coerce you into assisting me. However, I've finally come to the realization that I've ruined all of our relationships. I apologize for all of this. I no longer have any expectations of you. I have to do this myself. I do not wish to lose my brother, though. I gazed at the letter for a long time, feeling conflicted. I wanted to forgive her in part, wanted to act as though nothing had occurred and just brush everything under the rug. But something closer to satisfaction was felt by the other half of me, the one that had endured years of her taking advantage of me. At last, she was taking responsibility for her actions. However, it was too late and too little. I disposed of the letter in the garbage. After a few months, Emma miraculously made it through medical school. She didn't communicate with me very much, and to be honest, I didn't want to. It wasn't because of me that she appeared to be headed in the right direction now. She was left to fend for herself. And for the first time, I was pleased with her. The best aspect of it all, though, was that I was free. Without the guilt. Free from the burden of needing to support her all the time and the idea that I would be her safety net forever. I was no longer going to be her emotional target, and I was no longer her bank. The purpose of family was not to exploit one another. Supporting one another was important, not just when it was convenient. Despite her imperfections, Emma was finally realizing that the call had ceased. The drama subsided, and knowing that I was no longer her doormat gave me peace of mind for the first time in years. I never had to assist her again, and I never received another letter. And that was okay with me. Story 3. My brother married my girlfriend after having an affair with her. My daughter forced me to confront them once more 26 years later. You won't believe the conclusion. I'm Adam, a 46-year-old man, and this all began when I was just 20. Everything changed in that year. I found out that my ex-girlfriend had cheated on me with my own brother at that point. I had never felt such a strong sense of betrayal. It seems like it happened yesterday, and I can still feel the anguish and the raw, searing rage. I immediately told my brother that he was dead to me and no longer my brother in any meaningful sense. My family never severed their relationship with him, despite the fact that I made my position very obvious over the years. They just pretended that nothing had occurred, if anything. They seemed to expect me to go on and just comply. However, I didn't. I informed them that because I would never again be in the same room as him, they should invite him to family events if they ever had to pick between me and him. Since then, that has been my line in the sand, my non-negotiable. Let's fast forward to the present. Here we are, preparing for my daughter's wedding in the spring of next year. You would assume that all scars would heal with time, but some wounds are simply too deep. My daughter just sat me down and carefully broke the news that she was asking my brother and his family to her wedding, which is like a plot surprise in a movie. Indeed, the same brother who betrayed me. To make matters worse, he wed my former girlfriend. The fact that my daughter has been covertly developing a connection with them for the past 4 years behind my back just serves to complicate matters. She even requests that my niece, her cousin from that marriage, serve as the flower girl. Hearing all of this made me feel as though I was in a nightmare. All those old wounds tore open a fresh one, and my blood boiled. I was compelled to respond. I was honest with her about my limits. My brother was invited, but I wouldn't go. I wouldn't cover any of the wedding expenses either. She didn't like this, as was to be expected. She became upset, accusing me of clinging to the past and bringing up my old grievances at her wedding. The dispute swiftly got out of hand. People spoke up. Words were flung harshly. Her tears tore at me as she went. However, I felt trapped, as if my history were being written off as mere baggage. Then, as like the stress of the situation wasn't enough, my ex-wife was very upset with me, calling me a fool and claiming that my position had destroyed our kid. My parents also expressed similar opinions, telling me that I was being unreasonable and that I should move on. I quit answering their calls and shut off. My current girlfriend, who has supported me through this, politely advised that I change my mind and offered an apology to make things better. She cautioned that this might do irreversible harm to my connection with my daughter. Here I am, struggling with a complex jumble of feelings. On the one hand, I should be there at my daughter's wedding, which is a significant event. On the other hand, I've never really moved over my brother's betrayal and the resulting deep-seated hurt. I keep flipping it over in my head. Should I uphold my limits, which are based on respect and maintaining my tranquility? Or should I give in to maintain harmony and maybe reopen old wounds? I feel cut off from my family because of the entire issue. Nevertheless, I am aware that taking a position would harm my bond with my daughter. I'm caught between wanting to support my daughter on one of the most significant days of her life and feeling obligated to follow my morals. I'm thinking of methods to perhaps become engaged without having to speak to my brother personally while I weigh my alternatives. Is there any way I might help without being physically present at the wedding? How can I possibly have a dialogue with my kid that doesn't result in more tears and rage? For that, am I the fool? Not the fool, but the most popular remarks prior to the edit. This is one of those tales where your daughter has made the decision to turn against you in favor of someone who has violated your confidence. The fact that something happened is more important than whether it occurred 20 years ago. It implies that she violated your confidence. He can pay if she really wants him there. Your friends and family need a reality check. Tomorrow, find out if your daughter's fiancé cheated on her with her sister, chose to remain close to the affair partner, and moved on with him. How she would feel. When people are not in your position, it is extremely simple for them to pass judgment on you. And whether it's customary or not, the money belongs to you, and you may use it whatever you choose. With all the secrecy, I still wouldn't pay. You'll pay, I'll wager, and your brother will still show up. He has always been there for his daughter and has made it plain that his brother is no longer welcome in his life. In addition to expecting him to be a checkbook for her wedding, his daughter undermines his confidence by bringing this up against him. She is an adult lady. She can understand the repercussions. In order to get another one in OP, the brother was most likely making sure his daughter liked him. The brother is not someone I like. This is a highly controversial viewpoint. Why your daughter chose to associate with someone who had deceived their father is beyond me. If sleeping dogs were allowed to lay, how dramatic would that have been? Being correct won't help you much if this creates an irreversible breach between you and your daughter. I know a lot of people will disagree with me. Even while I completely back you in keeping your position, keep in mind that if you do so, your family will genuinely cut you off. So you will lose out on her possible children, birthday celebrations, and other family occasions. That's okay if that's what you're comfortable with. This has outlasted the existence of OP's daughter by 26 years. Giving up your bond with your daughter is like chopping off your nose to spite your face. But I can understand your frustration at his brother's invitation, your reluctance to speak or take photographs with him, etc. This is my query, OP. Your girlfriend was taken by your brother. Do you want your grandkids to be robbed of your daughter? If not, quit being a moron and put up with it for a day. Updates are now available. One update. Since it was simply another Thursday, I assumed the evening would be typical. Perhaps prepare a simple supper, watch a TV program, and relax. However, as soon as I inserted my key into the lock and pulled the door open, I understood that today was not like any other. The last two individuals I ever thought I'd see lounging on my couch were in my own living room, my brother and his spouse. My heart skipped a beat when I saw them there. Years ago, this brother had betrayed me by having an affair with my fiancé, whom he later married. And there they were, lounging about as though they hadn't completely upended my universe. Once, my keys were still hanging in the door as I stood still at the entryway. "What's happening?" I managed to ask at last, though my own voice sounded odd. Lily, my daughter, was also present. She appeared to be torn between wanting to tell everything and wanting to conceal. With a worried smile on her face, she hurried to her feet. As if it were the greatest surprise, she remarked, "Hey, Dad, you're home early. For what reason are they present?" With my gaze darting between my brother and his wife, I inquired, not thinking that this was actually taking place. "I invited them over, Dad. I felt that, before the wedding, it was time to work things out." Lily clarified in a hopeful but faltering voice. "Make things right." Incredulous, I repeated. Anger began to well up inside of me, and the room felt too small, the walls closing in. "Do you really believe that we can just settle this as if it were a trivial matter, given everything that transpired and what he did?" My brother, who had remained silent, finally broke the silence. His tone was too subdued. "I know this is difficult, but I just gave it a lot of thought." I interrupted him because I wasn't prepared to listen to his justifications. "Do you think this is simply difficult? You don't know. After destroying everything, you just walk into my living room and start talking as if we were going to have a pleasant conversation." With her hands raised as if to physically break up the altercation before it escalated, Lily moved in front of me. "Just listen for a minute, Dad. I find this to be significant. I want my wedding to be a day that unites rather than divides my entire family." "This isn't your family." I pointed to my brother and spoke firmly. "He's nothing to me now, as I told you years ago." "How about you?" I look at his wife. "You're not any better." For a brief moment, the room fell silent, the tension so intense that a knife could cut through it. Lily's face fell flat. Her eyes began to well up with tears. "Why don't you just move on, Dad? It's been years. Don't you see? You're just holding on to old grudges." Old grudges? I felt a laugh bubble up, but it was hollow, bitter. "These aren't just grudges. This is about respect, about trust, and I gestured angrily at my brother. "He broke all of that, but I'm asking you as your daughter to try for me." Lily pleaded, her voice breaking. "No, I can't, not with him." My voice was firm, final. I looked at my brother and his wife. "You need to leave now." "But Dad," Lily started. I said now. My voice boomed louder than I intended. There was a painful moment where nobody moved. Then slowly, my brother and his wife got up. They didn't say another word as they walked to the door, but my daughter's eyes stayed on me, hurt and accusing. "You're going to regret this," she whispered, a tear rolling down her cheek. "You're choosing your pride over your own daughter." The door shut behind them and the sound echoed in the empty room. I stood there, my heart racing, my emotions a tangled mess. Was I right to send them away? Or had I just made the biggest mistake pushing my daughter away over a feud that should have been buried long ago? Now the house was silent. Too silent. It felt like a gaping hole had been opened up right in the middle of my family, and I had no idea how to fix it. Could I have handled that better? Should I have just listened for Lily's sake? The questions swirled in my mind, each one heavier than the last. As I sat down on the couch trying to calm my racing heart, I realized this was far from over. The road to my daughter's wedding was going to be a rocky one, and I just made it even rockier. Update 2, with my daughter Lily's wedding getting closer every day, it felt like the walls were starting to close in on me. Everything seemed to be spiraling out of control ever since I kicked my brother and his wife out of my house. I thought I had seen it all, but things were about to get even more intense. It all kicked off one afternoon when I was out in the garage, trying to distract myself by working on a new woodworking project. I was sanding down a piece of oak when my phone buzzed. I wiped the sawdust off my hands and checked it. Seeing my parents' name flashing on the screen, a knot formed in my stomach, but I answered, hoping maybe they just wanted to chat. I was mistaken. As soon as I said hello, I could hear the disappointment in my dad's voice. "You've really done it this time," he said. His words were heavy, filled with frustration. "Your mother and I can't believe how you treated your brother and his wife. You're acting like a jerk. You know that." Hearing him say that felt like a slap in the face. I leaned against the workbench, my grip tightening on the phone. "Dad, come on, you know the whole story. How can you expect me to just forget everything and act like nothing happened?" "It's been over 25 years, he argued back. "Yes, he made a huge mistake back then. But people change. You're still clinging to this old grudge, and it's pulling the family apart." I tried to keep my cool, but it was hard pulling the family apart. Wasn't it him who did that when he betrayed me? Before I could add anything else, my mom took the phone from my dad. Her voice was softer, but it still carried a sharp edge of criticism. "Listen, we love you, but you need to hear this. You're being stubborn and selfish. Your daughter wants her uncle at her wedding. You're hurting her with your stubbornness. Don't you see that?" The call ended without any goodbyes. Just a lot of harsh words hanging in the air. I hung up the phone, feeling a mix of anger and sadness. Jessica, my girlfriend, had been in the doorway listening. She came over, her face full of concern. "You know, maybe they don't understand, but I do," Jessica said, wrapping her arm around me. Her support felt like a lifeline in a sea of chaos. "But maybe there's a way to manage this that doesn't end with you or Lily being hurt." Her words were a small comfort, but they didn't solve the big problem. The notion of seeing my brother at Lily's wedding, acting like everything was normal, made my stomach flip. But then there was Lily, my daughter, who I loved more than anything. She had been phoning practically every day, her voice stronger and more distressed each time. "Dad, please," she would say, her voice frantic. "This isn't just about you or Uncle Mike. It's my day. Don't you want to be there for me?" Her pleadings made my heart heavy. Was I really going to allow my history with my brother spoil one of the finest days of her life? But on the other hand, how could I just stand there and pretend everything was normal with the man who damaged me so deeply? As the wedding day got nearer, the strain continued growing. I'd lay awake at night, the home silent around me, fighting with what to do. On one hand, if I stuck to my guns and refused to go, I may regret missing my daughter's wedding forever. However, I wasn't sure I could take it without the same wounds rupturing anew if I went to confront my brother. It seemed like there was nothing to gain. Every choice seems to result in harm to someone. I paced back and forth in my living room for hours in an attempt to reach a compromise. Is it really possible for me to support Lily without interacting with my brother? It seemed more complex the more I considered it. Time was running out, and the decision became more difficult for me every day. It was like being caught between a rock and a hard place, and I wanted to find a way out before it destroyed me. The third update. I half expected more drama, so I braced myself every time the phone rang or someone came on the door as the days before Lily's wedding sped by. However, a totally unanticipated event then occurred that drastically changed the course of events. I was attempting to distract myself one calm day by spending time alone in the yard, weeding. I heard the front door open and close at that moment. I thought it was Jessica returning from someplace, but I was stopped in my tracks by a voice. "Are you out here, Dad?" Lily was the one. After cleaning the dirt from my knees and straightening up, I turned to see her approaching. Her expression was solemn. I wondered what she was thinking about this time, and my heart skipped a beat. I tried to seem calm as I said, "Hey, kiddo," but I was everything but. As she got near me, she inhaled deeply and exhaled gently, as if she were going to relieve a huge burden. "We must discuss, Dad. I've had a lot on my mind." With the late afternoon sun creating long shadows on the floor, we took a seat together on the porch's edge. With a move that reminded her of her early years, when a handhold might improve everything, she stretched out and grasped my hand. "I really apologize, Dad, for the way I dealt with Uncle Mike and his spouse. I ought to have spoken with you first." Rather to simply showing up for the meeting. With sadness in her voice, she started. Hearing her express such regret, I was both surprised and relieved. I gave her hand a little squeeze. "Lily, I know why you did it. Yes, it was difficult for me." "I understand, Dad, and I've been considering everything," she said, her eyes genuine and real. "Uncle Mike and his wife will not be attending the wedding because of this. Dad, I want you there. The fact that you are there is more crucial, and I don't want that to be ruined. The last thing I anticipated hearing was this. I struggled to find the right words for a time. Are you certain about this? I don't want you to feel as though you had to choose between having other family members or missing out on them because of me. She gave a head shake. She made a definite decision. No, Father, I want this. It goes beyond simply picking a side. It's important to celebrate the day with loved ones and those that encourage and uplift us, rather than those who may undermine us. That day, we talked more freely than we had in a long time. We discussed our families, the wedding specifics, and our shared outlook for the future. We seemed to be fixing ancient bridges that, by the time she went, had required significant repair. A tremendous burden that I was not really aware I was carrying until it was gone was lifted from my shoulders. The family quickly learned that Mike and his wife would not be attending. The responses were not all the same. A few felt a sense of relief. Others are a little agitated. However, my main goal was to ensure that Lily's day was as ideal as possible without the burden of past injuries hanging over us. I hadn't felt anything about the impending wedding in weeks until I watched her drive away that day. Perhaps, just possibly, this was a step toward our collective healing. For the time being, it seemed appropriate, even if the path ahead would not be smooth or quick. We were headed toward reconciliation, not only for Lily and me, but also for the entire family. One step at a time. The fourth update. I had assumed that everything would go smoothly until Lily's wedding. We were hit by a curveball, one of those bright afternoons. Not the type where drama is expected. My phone rang as I was in the kitchen preparing a snack. It was a long-time relative, someone who had a closer relationship with my brother's family than with mine. I wasn't sure whether I was ready for any more drama, so I paused before responding, but my curiosity won out. Hey, you should be aware of the reason Mike is so eager to attend Lily's wedding, the friend said, sounding a little uncomfortable straight away. A knot started to grow in my gut as I leaned against the counter. All right, shoot, I said, preparing myself for whatever was about to happen. With a heavy sigh, the companion goes on. As it happens, Mike has a secret agenda. Your nephew, his son, is also getting married shortly. Here's the worst part, though. Due to Mike's trick on you years ago, the majority of the family has avoided that wedding. There is a divide because they haven't forgiven him. I was astonished and angry at the same time. Thus, this was the main focus. For the purpose of keeping the family together, my brother wasn't attempting to patch up past wounds. In order to prevent his son's wedding from being a disaster, he was attempting to improve his own reputation. He reasoned that perhaps they might change their minds and agree to attend his son's special day if he could mend fences with you at Lily's wedding. After the conversation, the buddy said, sounding just as dissatisfied as I did. As I sat at the kitchen table, I began to process the news. When Lily came over later that day, I knew I had to tell her because it seemed dishonest. I told her everything, and it broke my heart to see her face go down as she took in the information. Why can't everything simply be easy, Dad? Why must there always be an angle? Lily was obviously feeling duped since her voice broke with passion. Just a piece of chess in her uncle's game. In an attempt to console her, I stretched out and gathered her in an embrace. I apologize, child. We occasionally encounter these strange curves in life, but keep in mind that we are all in this together. Your wedding is not about the games of others, but about you and your pleasure. Lily nodded, tears sparkling in her eyes. The idea of his using my wedding is just so annoying, Dad. I think it's crucial that he correct his own errors. That night, we talked for a long time. After the lengthy and occasionally unpleasant chat, Lily appeared to be a little more at ease. However, the disillusionment persisted. Together, we confirmed our choice. The wedding invitation would not be extended to Mike and his spouse. Old wounds were no longer the only consideration in this choice. It had to do with honesty and sincerity, two qualities Mike didn't appear to possess. The family soon learned about Mike's true intentions. Outrage and support for our choice were mixed together in the response. The majority of family members were even more convinced that Lily and I were acting morally. On her behalf, they were incensed that her uncle would go to such far as to take advantage of her particular day for his personal gain. The wedding day was getting closer. I was proud of Lily's handling of things and felt protective again. Yes, there would probably be more difficulties down the road, but this turn of events had only made our relationship stronger. We were more committed than ever to keeping the wedding's main emphasis. Lily's future is being celebrated, surrounded by those who truly loved her, devoid of any ulterior motivations or covert plans. Every night before I went to sleep, I reflected on how fortunate I was to have a kid who was so intelligent and resilient. Anything was thrown at us, I was certain that, as usual, we would confront it together. Update 5. Lily's wedding day was approaching. We were in for a little more turmoil before we could start celebrating, but now things appear to be settling down. Feeling deeply offended and deceived by Uncle Mike's cunning scheme, Lily made the decision that she would not simply ignore it. She had to question him and his spouse about why they truly wanted to attend her wedding. Lily met Uncle Mike and his wife in our neighborhood coffee shop one cold evening. Despite her extreme nervousness, she was adamant about finding out. Since they hadn't been involved in her life much lately, she questioned them directly why they were so eager to attend her wedding. Uncle Mike attempted to sidestep the subject by providing evasive responses and attempting to make things more amicable, but Lily refused to listen. She became even more irate when she realized he wasn't being completely honest. She felt as though she had not directly received the truth from them. Lily made a bold decision. She explained the entire event in a video that she created and shared on social media. She described how many family members were still upset with Uncle Mike for his actions from years ago, and she discovered that he was attempting to exploit her wedding to resolve his own issues. She described how she felt wounded and used as a result. Within our community and family circles, the video went viral very fast. People were surprised by Uncle Mike's conduct and expressed their support for Lily in their remarks. Uncle Mike's scheme appeared to have not only failed, but worsened his situation. Now, due to his son's actions, even more family members decided they would not attend his wedding. After then, the family turmoil intensified. People were picking sides, and there were a lot of contentious conversations both online and during family get-togethers. Seeing the family so split was difficult. A few days after the video was released, Uncle Mike gave me a call. He sounded more depressed and apologetic than I had ever heard him. All I wanted to do was put my son right. He informed me, however, that I now see how foolish it was of me to attempt to utilize Lily's wedding in that way. Although it was too little, too late for many, I could see he was truly sorry. In spite of everything, Lily's wedding day came, and it was a gorgeous, sunny day that was ideal for a wedding. We all made an effort to ignore the family issues and concentrate on Lily and her special day, but there was still some tension in the air. I had a flood of relief and joy as she went down the aisle, beaming and smiling. She looked magnificent. The most important thing was that we were all present for her. There was a lot of dancing, laughter, and cake during the beautiful wedding. Additionally, it seemed as though the family drama had been put on pause for at least one day. Following the wedding, everyone was thrilled to celebrate Lily and her new beginning. Our family situation did not suddenly return to normal. It felt like certain wounds may take a long time to heal, and the rifts were still present. Lily knew she had the backing of several family members who appreciated her and supported her choice, but what really mattered was that she had a fantastic wedding day. We learned a lot about honesty and sticking up for your beliefs from this entire circumstance. Some of us grew closer as a result, but it was also messy and traumatic at times. We came to see how critical it is to stand by one another and communicate our objectives clearly. It also taught Lily how to deal with difficult circumstances with dignity and fortitude. Last update. The air seemed different, almost electrifying, as we exited the town hall that day because of the unfiltered feelings and discoveries that had taken place. Everyone stayed, a little reluctant to go so soon after such passionate conversations. Family members formed small groups and engaged in serious discourse as the talks that began inside spilled out onto the stairs. Lily remained near me, a contemplative, more optimistic look taking the place of her previous fear. That was too much, Dad. However, I believe it was what we need. Isn't that strange? What is the amount? We had no idea how much suffering might have been prevented with a few open discussions. I gave her a little shoulder squeeze while nodding. Yes, there's a lot to process. However, you're correct. Without realizing it, we've been lugging about parts of a puzzle. We eventually began assembling them around us today. I could envision similar situations developing. Aunt Clara and Mike were more relaxed than they have been in years as they engaged in a lengthy chat. With nods and the odd pat on a shoulder, their conversation appeared sincere. It was evident that there was a determination to make forgiveness work, even though the road to it could be difficult and drawn out. Younger family members were now gathered around my cousin, whose unannounced visit had given yet another dimension to our family's history, and anxious to learn more about their experiences living abroad and the lessons that brought them back to us at such a pivotal moment. Their tales, which were full of experiences and lessons learned from afar, brought a sense of humor to the event and served as a reminder of the ties that remained strong in spite of everything. The crowd began to thin out gradually. I headed to our car with Lily. Long shadows were formed by the setting sun, and a cold air suggested that fall would soon arrive. I believe a lot of things changed for us today, Dad. For the better, Lily said thoughtfully. Yes, it did. With a mixture of relief and pride, I nodded. And child, you have my admiration. To confront all of this head-on and advocate for transparency and honesty required a great deal of bravery. Lily grinned as she gazed up at the sky, which was tinged with pink and orange. Isn't it going to be all right? It feels like we're not stuck anymore, even though we still have a lot to figure out. As we arrived to the car and stopped to gaze back at the town hall, which was now illuminated by the golden rays of the fading sun, I replied, Exactly. The important thing is that we're making progress. Today was a significant milestone in the healing process. And as a family, we'll deal with whatever happens next. The town hall became smaller in the rearview mirror as we drove away. I experienced a sense of fresh start and closure. In their place, the secrets that had threatened to destroy us were suddenly visible. There was a tentative hope that had grown. It served as a reminder that, although our history may have shaped who we are, it need not define us. With all of its intricacies and flaws, our family was gradually coming together again, one open discussion at a time.